This is my 1990 Chevy K1500. This is a 5.3 liter LM7 mated to a 4L80E with the factory NP241C. And I'm Max, and I built this thing. And I'm gonna tell you every single thing I did to make this truck work. So, you wanna build this truck. Now, if you know a little something about the LS swap and the OBS truck, you know that it's a pretty common swap. And when I say pretty common, it's not that you see it every time you go to the grocery store, but a lot of guys have done it. And there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of Facebook forums, YouTube videos, forums, information everywhere. And through my research, I found that there's a lot of info, there's a lot of stuff that people leave out, and there's a lot of little things that you don't know how to do or what part to get that really set me back. And it took a lot of stuff to get figured out. And I did it, I figured it all out. And now I'm gonna share pretty much everything I did to make this truck run with you guys. So at the end of the video, also there will be a list of all the parts I use with part numbers and cost. And I try my best to remember everything I bought. It's kind of hard because there's so many little things, but I kept pretty good track of everything I used. So hopefully this walkthrough will help you guys if you're doing an LS swap and an OBS or just an LS swap in general, because a lot of it applies to any swap. So a little background on the truck. This was my grandpa's truck. He bought it brand new in 1990 and drove the piss out of it. It has 200,000 miles on it. It's been repainted. It's a beautiful truck. It's been garage kept its whole life, but he passed away about a year and a half ago. He meant a lot to my family and me, and so did this truck. So I decided to preserve the legacy, and I got the truck. He gifted it to me, and I decided to make it cool because it was pretty grandpa spec'd out before. Not that that's not cool. It's not my style. Without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, I'm gonna walk through everything on this truck front to back. So we're gonna start right up front here with the motor. So this is a 2004 Chevy LM7 5.3. It's out of like a 1500 or something like that. It's a VIN code T, and that's what you want for this swap. Makes it easier. So this motor is stock as a rock. It has factory manifolds, factory fuel, factory cam, factory everything. It has ARP head studs, and that's for later on. But for now, I wanted to keep it stock just so I can make this thing run reliable and be good. So let's first talk about cooling. This radiator is out of a 454 SS OBS truck. And the reason I did that is because it has this extra nipple right here for the breather on the LS, which you need. You don't need to hook up any of the trans lines on the other side. But this radiator fits in here perfectly because it's for this truck body, not for the motor. But it's little, and it's way bigger than factory. Also, these fans are from just some early 2000s Suburban, and there's two fan relays right there, and there's an output on the ECU, and that's how that's run. And those two are factory heater elements, and those run to the water pump on the motor, no problem. So let's talk about serpentine stuff. Factory 4-wire 5.3 alternator, factory 5.3 power steering pump, factory 5.3 water pump, a factory OBS AC pump, and the lines aren't hooked up right now. I'm gonna do that next summer because I don't care right now. Also, both these brackets, the AC as well as alternator and power steering, are all ICT billet. They make a lot of cool LS stuff. Definitely look into them. So that's how the serpentine belt's done. So let's talk about how this thing's mounted in here. Those are factory, they're brand new, but they're factory OBS motor mounts. And then Dirty Dingo makes the mounts that bolt on the LS, and they're adjustable, so this motor can move front to back. And how I set where I was front to back, because those manifolds are really close to the frame, so I had to make sure those cleared. And basically what I did is I set the motor and trans in there, got it where I want it with the manifolds on there, and that's kind of where it's sat. It's pretty far back, but that's kind of how they all run, and plus it gives you a ton of room. Braking is all factory, obviously, don't need to do anything there. And my whole harness runs back up in there, and it's behind the dash. So that made it way easier, makes it nice and clean. And that's where it was factory. It's very tight to put it behind the dash, very tight. But I made it work, and it's fine. This throttle cable, it is a drive-by cable wiring harness and throttle body. So that cable is off a 1990, just 1500. And it actually fits right in there, like the factory one did, and connects to the pedal, and connects to there. No one ever talked about this, but I found out that it works perfectly. All right, now let's talk what's behind the motor. So this is a 4L80E. It's a 2002 4L80E, and it's the better one because it has the return line that is on the back, and it helps with cooling. Good one to get. So the flywheel is I got it from Summit. It's some 5.3 to 4L80 flywheel, pretty easy to get. Torque converter's factory, the trans bolts right up, no problem, to the motor. And so let's crawl in here and tell you how I got it mounted. So crawling underneath the truck, you kind of check out what's going on here. So this cross member originally was bolted right there and right there. What I did is I just unbolted it and slid it back to mate with the trans mount. And that trans mount right there is a factory 4L80 mount off like a 2500 truck. And this is factory MP241 T case out of the OBS. All you have to do is change the input shaft to a 32 spline, I think it is. And that you have to tear down the T case and get a new input shaft, and then they'll mate together, no problem. These drive shafts, this one was lengthened for the front due to the length of the 4L80, and the rear one was shortened. So the rear one's actually pretty short. You can't see it, but it's pretty short. Now I just kept the factory U-joint on the end of the drive shaft because it's still the factory rear end. I'll talk about the suspension in a second here, but eventually I'm going to need to do something about that rear end because it's not a posi, and one tire fire is not cool, and it never has been. So like I said, the ECU is hidden back in here, and this is the little fuse block that is supplied by PSI in their kit. And this is OBD2 for the motor and tranny, and these are all the fuses and the relays for it. So this tucks in here real nice. It was really tight to get the ECU back in there, but it all works, and all my wiring is back behind there. All the gauges inside the driver's side is all factory. Besides that, I took the stereo out and moved it there. So these gauges are all factory and they all work. So the coolant, I'll start with that. ICT billet makes a little adapter. I'll show you right now. This took a while to figure out. So factory on LS is the coolant temp port is right there on that side of the head. Now these heads are the same head side to side. So if you flip that head this way, the port is back here. Now if you look down in there, you see that little aluminum piece right there. And that's the ICT billet piece, and that brass piece is the factory coolant temp sensor off the OBS. And once I plugged that in, it worked. So oil pressure, that's the next one, is located on the back right in there on an LS. And what I did for that is in 1999 and 2000, Chevy had a one-wire oil pressure sensor in their trucks, and this is also a one-wire oil pressure sensor. So if you get a sensor from a 99 to 2000 LS 5.3, it will work with this and plug right into your factory harness, and make sure you don't cut that away when you're trimming up the harness. So fuel tank, that worked from before. This one right here, volts, that hooks in because there's a power supply coming in from that fuse block over there. Fuel tank, that just works. Speedo. So Speedo, what I had to do is, factory on this truck, there's kind of two. The trans has one and the T case has one. On LS, this 4L80 has two in the trans. One is for the computer and the other one is an output speed. And the way I ran it is the output on the trans, that VSS, I made a splitter. So one goes to the gauges and one goes to the ECU. So all the VSS reads on the back of the trans. There's no VSS on the T case. Next, let's talk stance. So these wheels right here, these are 22 by 10 Cosmos racing wheels. They're XT206Rs, and they're the milled and black style. These tires are 275 35 R22s, just some off brands. And the back is the same, it's not staggered. So as you know, four-wheel drives stick out a tiny bit more in the front, but that's okay. So as far as lowering in the front, this truck has full Beltec lowering street shocks on it. The front has torsion keys, and they're also Beltec. And they're adjustable, so I can actually bring the truck down to like right there and then all the way up to like here. So there's a lot of adjustment up front, which I really like, and same with the rear. So in the rear, it's also Beltec. It's a C-notch kit. You can kind of see it. There's a C-notch with a little bump stop. So it's a bolt-in kit, but I welded it in. So that flip kit dropped it a ton. And I also dropped it so much that I had to put a 1.5/2 inch lift shackle in the rear just to bring it up, because it dropped it like 8.5 inches, and it was literally tucking tire with just a flip kit. So I had to put the lift kit in the rear. Additionally, it has airbags now, and these are actually made for the C-notch. So those fit really good, because when you put a little weight in these things, the rears are so soft. I also run this thing at like 15 pounds of air in there, just because I don't want the tire hitting the fender right there. Also, while I'm here, so this exhaust is 2.5 off the manifolds, because that's what they are. Then it joins together to make a 3-inch, and then 3-inch single MagnaFlow, and 3-inch out the rear. Pretty simple. Now I'm probably forgetting stuff about the motor and trans and how I did stuff. So if there's something you want to see that I didn't touch on, let me know in the comments, and I'd be happy to make a video out of it, because there's so many little things that went into a project like this.